The continent of Africa contains approximately 1.369 billion people, spread out over 54 countries. The United Nations Geoscheme divides the continent into 5 distinct subregions: Northern Africa, West Africa, Middle Africa, East Africa, and Southern Africa. Today we will talk about Southern Africa. Southern Africa is the smallest and least populous subregion of Africa. Its population is just 68 million. There are 5 countries in this region: South Africa, Botswana, Lesotho, Namibia, Swaziland. Let's take a look on them closely. Don't forget like and subscribe. Namibia, officially the Republic of Namibia, is a country in southern Africa. The driest country in sub-Saharan Africa, Namibia has been inhabited since prehistoric times by the San, Damara and Nama people. Around the 14th century, immigrating Bantu peoples arrived as part of the Bantu expansion. Since then, the Bantu groups, the largest being the Ovambo, have dominated the population of the country. Since the late 19th century, they have constituted a majority. With a population of 2.55 million people today, Namibia is one of the least densely populated countries in the world. Its capital and largest city is Windhoek. It is located in central Namibia in the Khomas Highland Plateau area, almost exactly at the country's geographical center. Windhoek is the social, economic, political, and cultural center of the country. Nearly every Namibian national enterprise, governmental body, educational and cultural institution is headquartered there. The city developed at the site of a permanent hot spring known to the local pastoral tribes. It developed rapidly after Jonker Afrikaner, captain of the Orlum, settled there in 1840 and built a stone church for his community. In the decades following, multiple wars and armed hostilities resulted in the neglect and destruction of the new settlement. Windhoek was founded a second time in 1890 by Imperial German Army Major Kurt von Francois, when the territory was colonized by the German Empire. Namibia has the second lowest population density of any sovereign country, after Mongolia. Nowadays there are on average 3.08 people per square kilometer. The majority of the Namibian population is of Bantu-speaking origin, mostly of the Ovambo ethnicity, which forms about half of the population, residing mainly in the north of the country, although many are now resident in towns throughout Namibia. Other ethnic groups are the Herero and Himba people, who speak the related Herero language, and the Damara, who, like the Nama, speak Kokho. In addition to the Bantu majority, there are large groups of Khoisan, such as Nama and San, who are descendants of the original inhabitants of southern Africa. The country also contains some descendants of refugees from Angola. There are also 2 smaller groups of people with mixed racial origins, called Cholerids and Basters, who together make up 8.0%, with the Cholerids outnumbering the Basters 2-1. Whites, being mainly of Afrikaner, German, British and Portuguese origin, make up between 4.0 and 7.0% of the population. Although their proportion of the population decreased after independence due to emigration and lower birth rates, they still form the second largest population of European ancestry, both in terms of percentage and actual numbers, in sub-Saharan Africa, after South Africa. The Christian community makes up 80% to 90% of the population of Namibia, with at least 75% being Protestant, of which at least 50% are Lutheran. Lutherans are the largest religious group, a legacy of the German and Finnish missionary work during the country's colonial times. 0.10% to 20% of the population hold indigenous beliefs. Missionary activities during the second half of the 19th century resulted in many Namibians converting to Christianity. Today most Christians are Lutheran, but there also are Roman Catholic, Methodist, Anglican, African Methodist Episcopal, Dutch Reformed, Latter-day Saints and Jehovah's Witnesses. Islam in Namibia is subscribed to by about 9,000 people, many of them Nama. Namibia is home to a small Jewish community of about 100 people. According to the 2022 census, the most common languages are Oshiwambo, the most spoken language for 49% of households, Kokagawib, 11.3%, Afrikaans, 10.4%, Ru Kwangali, 9%, and Oja-Herero, 9%. The most widely understood national language is Afrikaans, the country's lingua franca. Both Afrikaans and English are used primarily as a second language reserved for public communication. The dry lands of Namibia have been inhabited since prehistoric times by the San, Damara, and Nama. For thousands of years, the Khoisan peoples of southern Africa maintained a nomadic life, the Khoikhoi as pastoralists and the San people as hunter-gatherers. Around the 14th century, immigrating Bantu people began to arrive during the Bantu expansion from Central Africa. The first Europeans to disembark and explore the region were the Portuguese navigators Diogo Sau in 1485 and Bartolomeu Dias in 1486, but the Portuguese did not try to claim the area. Like most of the interior of sub-Saharan Africa, Namibia was not extensively explored by Europeans until the 19th century. At that time, traders and settlers came principally from Germany and Sweden. In 1870, Finnish missionaries came to the northern part of Namibia to spread the Lutheran religion among the Ovambo and Kavango people. In the late 19th century, Dorsland trekkers crossed the area on their way from the Transvaal to Angola. Some of them settled in Namibia. Botswana is a landlocked country in southern Africa. Botswana is topographically flat, with approximately 70% of its territory being the Kalahari Desert. A country of slightly over 2.3 million people, Botswana is one of the most sparsely populated countries in the world. It is essentially the nation-state of the Tswana, who make up 79% of the population. About 11.6% of the population lives in the capital and largest city, Gaborone. Formerly one of the world's poorest countries, with a GDP per capita of about $70 per year in the late 1960s, it has since transformed itself into an upper-middle-income country, with one of the world's fastest-growing economies. Gaborone is the capital and largest city of Botswana with a population of 246,325 based on the 2022 census, about 10% of the total population of Botswana. Gaborone is situated between Kagale Hill and Udi Hill, near the confluence of the Notwane River and Sagoda Chain River in the southeastern corner of Botswana, 15 kilometers, 9.3 miles, from the South African border. The city is served by the Sir Seretse Khama International Airport. It is an administrative district in its own right, but is the capital of the surrounding Southeast District. Locals often refer to the city as GC or Motsi Mshate. The modern town was only founded in 1964, after a decision was taken to establish a capital for Botswana, which became a self-governing territory in 1965, before becoming a fully independent republic on the 30th of September 1966. Modern-day humans first inhabited the country over 200,000 years ago. The Tswana ethnic group were descended mainly from Bantu-speaking tribes who migrated southward of Africa to modern Botswana around 600 AD, living in tribal enclaves as farmers and herders. In 1885, the British colonized the area and declared a protectorate under the name of Bechuanaland. As decolonization occurred, Bechuanaland became an independent Commonwealth Republic under its current name on the 30th of September 1966. Since then, it has been a representative republic, with a consistent record of uninterrupted democratic elections and the lowest perceived corruption ranking in Africa since at least 1998. As of 2022, the Tswana are the majority ethnic group in Botswana, making up approximately 79% of the population, followed by Kalanga at 11% and the San, Basarwa, at 3%. The remaining 7% is made up of white Batswana, European Batswana, Indians, and a number of other smaller Southern African ethnic groups. The official language of Botswana is English, while Setswana is widely spoken across the country. An estimated 77% of the country's citizens identify as Christians. Anglicans, Methodists, and the United Congregational Church of Southern Africa make up the majority of Christians. There are also congregations of Lutherans, Baptists, Roman Catholics, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Dutch Reformed Church, Mennonites, Seventh-day Adventists, Jehovah's Witnesses, and Serbian Orthodox in the country. According to the 2022 census, the nation has around 5,000 Muslims, mainly from South Asia, 3,000 Hindus, and 700 of the Baha'i faith. Approximately 20% of citizens identify with no religion. With almost one-third of its land set aside for conservation, a low-density tourism policy that leaves it blissfully crowd-free, and the largest free-roaming elephant population on the planet, Botswana is touted as the ultimate safari destination by those in the know. The Okavango Delta's unique scenery and abundant Big Five game understandably draws most of the attention, but Botswana is much more than a one-hit wonder. Its parks and reserves span an impressive range of landscapes, from the surreal stark beauty of the Makgadikgadi salt pans to the primeval wilderness of the Central Kalahari Game Reserve. The country's wildlife is rich and varied. In addition to the countless elephants, giraffe, buffalo, and hippo that fill the water-rich northern parks, there is the chance to spot less common desert species in the more arid Kalahari regions. It is also home to the continent's longest zebra migration, a healthy population of lion, leopard, cheetah, and wild dog, and over 600 species of birds. Activities are similarly diverse. Adventurous safari-goers can ditch the traditional game viewer in favor of any mode of transport imaginable: safari by horseback, boat, mokoro canoe or quad bike, or simply venture out on foot. Eswatini, formerly the Kingdom of Eswatini and also known by its former official name Swaziland, is a landlocked country in southern Africa. It is bordered by Mozambique to its northeast and South Africa to its north, west, south, and southeast. At no more than 200 kilometers, 120 miles, north to south and 130 kilometers, 81 miles, east to west, Eswatini is one of the smallest countries in Africa. Despite this, its climate and topography are diverse, ranging from a cool and mountainous highveld to a hot and dry lowveld. Mbabane is a city in Eswatini, previously called Swaziland, and is one of the two capitals, along with Lobamba, serving as the executive capital. With an estimated population of almost 100,000, it is located on the Mbabane River and its tributary the Palangane River in the Mdizimba Mountains. It is located in the Ho-Ho region, of which it is also the capital. The average elevation of the city is 1,243 meters. The town grew after the nation's administrative center moved from Bremerstorp, now called Manzini, in 1902. It derives its name from a chief, Mbabane Kunene, who lived in the area when British settlers arrived. Mbabane was founded in 1887 by Mickey Wells, on the spot where the Transvaal to Mozambique route crossed the Mbabane River. It was declared the capital of the new protectorate of Swaziland in 1902. During this time, Mbabane consisted of a few shops, churches, and schools founded by white settlers. Black Africans were not allowed to live in the town and had to reside in nearby rural districts. By the 1930s, Mbabane had electricity, running water, telephone connection, and a hospital. Artifacts have been found indicating human activity dating back to the early Stone Age, around 200,000 years ago. Prehistoric rock art paintings dating from as far back as circa 27,000 years ago to as recently as the 19th century can be found around the country. The earliest known inhabitants of the region were Khoisan hunter-gatherers. They were largely replaced by the Nguni during the Great Bantu migrations. These peoples originated from the Great Lakes region of eastern and central Africa. Evidence of agriculture and iron use dates from about the 4th century. People speaking languages ancestral to the current Sotho and Nguni languages began settling no later than the 11th century. In 1903, after the British victory in the Second Boer War, Swaziland became one of the British High Commission territories. Swaziland was a protected state until independence was regained in 1968. The majority of Eswatini's population is ethnically Swazi, mixed with a small number of Zulu and white Africans, mostly people of British and Afrikaner descent. Traditionally, Swazi have been subsistence farmers and herders, but most now mix such activities with work in the growing urban formal economy and in government. Some Swazi work in the mines in South Africa. Eswatini also received Portuguese settlers and African refugees from Mozambique. Christianity in Eswatini is sometimes mixed with traditional beliefs and practices. Many traditionalists believe that most Swazi ascribe a special spiritual role to the monarch. Siswati is a Bantu language of the Nguni group, spoken in Eswatini and South Africa. It has 2.5 million speakers and is taught in schools. It is an official language of Eswatini, along with English, and one of the official languages of South Africa. English is the medium of communication in schools, conducting business, and the press. About 76,000 people in the country speak Zulu. Sangha, which is spoken by many people throughout the region, is spoken by about 19,000 people in Eswatini. Afrikaans is also spoken by some residents of Afrikaner descent. Portuguese has been introduced as a third language in the schools because of the large community of Portuguese speakers from Mozambique or northern and central Portugal. 83% of the total population adheres to Christianity in Eswatini. Anglican, Protestant and indigenous African churches, including African Zionist, 40%, constitute the majority of Christians, followed by Catholicism at 6% of the population. On the 18th of July 2012, Elena Wamakoya was elected Anglican Bishop of Swaziland, becoming the first woman to be a bishop in Africa and serving in that position until her death in 2021. 15% of the population follows traditional religions. Other non-Christian religions practiced in the country include Islam, the Baha'i Faith, and Hinduism. There were 14 Jewish families in 2021. The Kingdom of Eswatini does not recognize non-civil marriages such as Islamic Rite marriage contracts. Lesotho, formerly the Kingdom of Lesotho, is a landlocked country in southern Africa. As an enclave of South Africa, with which it shares a 1,106 kilometers border, it is the only sovereign enclave in the world outside of the Italian peninsula. It is situated in the Maladi Mountains and contains the highest peak in southern Africa. It has an area of over 30,000 square kilometers, 11,600 square miles, and has a population of about 2 million. Its capital and largest city is Maseru. It is also the capital of the Maseru district. Located on the Caledon River, Maseru lies directly on the Lesotho-South Africa border. Maseru had a population of over 330,000 in the 2022 census. The city was established as a police camp and assigned as the capital after the country became a British protectorate in 1869. When the country achieved independence in 1966, Maseru retained its status as capital. The name of the city is a Sesotho word meaning red sandstones. Lesotho was formed in 1822 by King Moshoeshoe. The first continuous encroachments by Dutch settlers made the king enter into an agreement with the British Empire to become a protectorate in 1868 and, in 1884, a crown colony. In 1966 it achieved independence and was subsequently ruled by the Basotho National Party, BNP, for 2 decades. Constitutional government was restored in 1993 after 7 years of military rule. King Moshoeshoe II was exiled in 1990 but returned in 1992 and was reinstated in 1995. 1 year later, Moshoeshoe II died and his son Letsie III took the throne, which he currently holds. Lesotho is considered a lower middle-income country with significant socioeconomic challenges. Almost half of its population is below the poverty line, and the country's HIV/AIDS prevalence rate is the second highest in the world. However, it also targets a high rate of universal primary education and has one of the highest rates of literacy in Africa, 81.02% as of 2021. Lesotho's ethno-linguistic structure consists mostly of the Basotho, a Bantu-speaking people. An estimated 99.7% of the people identify as Basotho. In this regard, Lesotho is part of a minority of African countries that are nation-states with a single dominant cultural ethnic group and language. The majority of African nations' borders were drawn by colonial powers and do not correspond to ethnic boundaries or pre-colonial polities. Basotho subgroups include the Bafokeng, Batlong, Bafuthi, Bakuena, Batong, Batsoneng, and Mtbele. About 1% of the population consists of Europeans, Asians, and Xhosa. The population of Lesotho is estimated to be more than 95% Christian. Among these estimations, Catholics represent 49.4% of the population, served by the province of the Metropolitan Archbishop of Maseru and his 3 suffragans, the bishops of Laribe, Moheles Hoek and Caxias Nek, who form the National Episcopal Conference. Protestants account for 18.2% of the population, Pentecostals 15.4%, Anglicans 5.3%, and other Christians an additional 1.8%. Non-Christian religions represent 9.6% of the population, and those of no religion 0.2%. The Basotho people have developed a unique culture. As one of the few African tribes living in a mountainous environment, they have made many adaptations to their conditions. The Basotho blanket is one example. All around the country you will see people dressed in woolen blankets, often with beautiful patterns. This is the ideal garment for a cold environment, and also has the versatility of keeping the rain off. Villages are often located high in the mountains, usually on the mid-levels well above the deep river valleys and the flood dangers they carry. Villages are very structured. They are made up of a number of kraals, i.e. a collection of buildings belonging to one family. Some are for sleeping, some for storage, and one for cooking. Each kraal will also have an enclosure for livestock. Each village has a chief, or headman, who will fall under the chief for the area. The Basotho are agriculturalists. All around the village will be many fields, and these are allocated by the chief to villagers. Many crops are cultivated, including maize, wheat, sorghum, beans and peas, as well as vegetables such as onions and cabbage. Many local herbs are also gathered as green vegetables, which the Basotho call moroho. Animals are very important in Basotho society. The Basotho pony represents the best form of transport in the mountains, and donkeys are often used as pack animals. Most families will have some cattle, and oxen are used to plow the sloping mountain fields. Wool is a major source of income both from Memo sheep and mohair from Angora goats, and you will see many herds of both deep in the mountains. They are looked after by shepherds, often young boys, who live in simple huts called motibo, often perched on ridges at well over 3,000 meters and very well hidden. South Africa, officially the Republic of South Africa, is the southernmost country in Africa. It is bounded to the south by 2,798 kilometers, 1,739 miles, of coastline that stretches along the South Atlantic and Indian Oceans. It is the southernmost country on the mainland of the Old World, and the second most populous country located entirely south of the equator, after Tanzania. South Africa is a biodiversity hotspot, with unique biomes, plant and animal life. With over 60 million people, the country is the world's 24th most populous nation and covers an area of 1,221,037 square kilometers, 471,445 square miles. Pretoria is the administrative capital, while Cape Town, as the seat of parliament, is the legislative capital. Bloemfontein has traditionally been regarded as the judicial capital. The largest city and site of highest court is Johannesburg. About 80% of the population are black South Africans. The remaining population consists of Africa's largest communities of European, white South Africans, Asian, Indian South Africans and Chinese South Africans, and multiracial, colored South Africans, ancestry. South Africa is a multi-ethnic society encompassing a wide variety of cultures, languages, and religions. Its pluralistic makeup is reflected in the Constitution's recognition of 12 official languages, the fourth highest number in the world. According to the 2021 census, the two most spoken first languages are Zulu, 22.7%, and Xhosa, 16.0%. The two next ones are of European origin. Afrikaans, 13.5%, developed from Dutch and serves as the first language of most colored and white South Africans. English, 9.6%, reflects the legacy of British colonialism and is commonly used in public and commercial life. South Africa contains some of the oldest archaeological and human fossil sites in the world. Archaeologists have recovered extensive fossil remains from a series of caves in Gauteng province. The area, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, has been branded the cradle of humankind. These finds suggest that various hominid species existed in South Africa from about 3 million years ago, starting with Australopithecus africanus, followed by Australopithecus sediba, Homo ergaster, Homo erectus, Homo rhodesiensis, Homo helmae, Homo naledi, and modern humans, Homo sapiens. Modern humans have inhabited southern Africa for at least 170,000 years. Various researchers have located pebble tools within the Vaal River Valley. According to the 2022 census, Christians accounted for 79.8% of the population, with a majority of them being members of various Protestant denominations, broadly defined to include syncretic African-initiated churches, and a minority of Roman Catholics and other Christians. African-initiated churches formed the largest of the Christian groups. It was believed that many of the persons who claimed no affiliation with any organized religion adhered to a traditional African religion. There are an estimated 200,000 traditional healers, and up to 60% of South Africans consult these healers, generally called Sangoma, diviner, or Inyanga, herbalist. These healers use a combination of ancestral spiritual beliefs and a belief in the spiritual and medicinal properties of local fauna, flora, and fungi, commonly known as Mudi, medicine, to facilitate healing in clients. Many peoples have syncretic religious practices combining Christian and indigenous influences. The South African black majority still has a substantial number of rural inhabitants who lead largely impoverished lives. It is among these people that cultural traditions survive most strongly. As blacks have become increasingly urbanized and westernized, aspects of traditional culture have declined. Members of the middle class, who are predominantly white but whose ranks include growing numbers of black, colored, and Indian people, 295, have lifestyles similar in many respects to that of people found in Western Europe, North America, and Australasia.